So you finally made your decision to ride a motorcycle. Congratulations, you've made the right choice. Riding a motorcycle has completely changed my life, and it will change yours as well. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to ride one. So step number 1, put the key in the motorcycle. Step number 2, throw a leg over it. Step number 3, close the kickstand. Step number 4, turn the motorcycle on. Step number 5, full send. Well, not exactly. It's not as easy as that, so let's talk. This video on how to learn how to ride a motorcycle is going to be broken down into 2 separate videos. This first video is going to be all about mechanics. I'm going to be talking to you about all the motorcycle controls, how to shift the motorcycle, how to start riding it, and then the second episode is going to be taking it on the street. So before we get into all that stuff, I just want to throw a couple of caveats out there. Number 1, I am not a professional. My suggestion would be to sign up for an MSF course, go through the process. After you've gone through the process, use this video in addition to what you learned to further your knowledge. So with that said, let's begin. So before you begin to actually ride a motorcycle for the first time, you have to have the proper gear. As you can see, I am wearing Dainese boots. These are not regular boots. These are made for riding. I'm riding jeans made by Dainese, and I'm wearing a Dainese jacket that's made specifically for riding. Other than that, make sure that if you're practicing, make sure you do it in a safe environment such as this. It's a big parking lot. There's no traffic coming and going. A lot of these cars are pretty much stationary for the most part. So now I want to get you comfortable with all the components of a motorcycle. These are pretty much standard on every single motorcycle, but the locations may be a little bit different depending on the manufacturer. 99 to 100% of the time, you will find your clutch lever on the left side. If you buy a stock motorcycle, the clutch lever is usually going to be as long as this. But sometimes if you buy something modified, like a modified sport bike, it might have shorty levers. So this might look a little bit different. The same thing with the brakes. These are the brake levers. I would say 90% of the time you will be using the front brakes. More on that later. Aside from that, you have your horn, which is right here. And then your high beams are right here. And then your turn signals are right here. You push left and you push right. And then if you hit the center, you cancel it out. Some motorcycles, such as this one, has auto-canceling turn signals, but on others you have to do it manually, depending on the manufacturer once again. This is your ignition switch. So on Triumph motorcycles, this ignition switch has 3 different positions. The first position is completely off. The second position is when the battery connects with all the electronics and powers the entire system up. Now let's move over to the opposite direction of the motorcycle. These are your foot pegs. And you might be wondering what this is. This controls the rear brake. The rear brake gets used about 10% of the time. More on that later. Let's move over to the left side. You have another lever. This controls shifting. And when we start riding the motorcycle and we get to that stage, I'll describe to you more in detail. With that said, let's throw a leg over this motorcycle and talk a little bit about how to mount it. I like to put my hand on the grip here and swing a leg over it from the left side. I do not recommend standing on this side and throwing a leg over it. You should always throw a leg over your motorcycle standing from the left side of it. When you get on the motorcycle, depending on how tall you are, you may or may not have a difficult time turning the motorcycle over. So if you're a short-statured person, I got 2 videos for you to watch. The first one I'm doing with this exact motorcycle, and I teach you guys everything that I learned up to this point as a short rider. I'm only 5'6" tall and I have a 30-inch inseam, but I always ride bikes that are way taller than my inseam, and I don't have a problem doing it, and you shouldn't either with a lot of practice. So with that being said, put both hands on both grips and move the motorcycle with your left foot to the center. If you can flat-footed. If not, put your right foot and tippy toe and then kick your kickstand. That's why it's called a kickstand, because you kick it up. And now your motorcycle is almost ready to start. So now let's get familiar with the 2 controls that are here. Number 1, you have your clutch lever, which engages and disengages the clutch. and then you also have your brakes, which is on the right. And of course, as we already talked about before in all the control, this controls shifting on the bottom, and then you have your brakes on the right side. Riding a motorcycle is something that you do with your entire body. Your fingers are going to be pulling on the clutch. If you have one of those motorcycles like I do, which has seamless quick up and down shifting, then you're only going to use the clutch only one time to put the motorcycle in first gear after the motorcycle sets off. For demonstration purposes, I turned off my quick shifter, and I'm going to be using the clutch just like you guys would be on your motorcycle. So riding a motorcycle is pretty much similar to riding a car that has a manual transmission. If you've ever ridden a car that has a manual transmission, you'll find that riding a motorcycle is a lot easier for you. So now we're going to turn on the motorcycle for the first time. As I mentioned before, this has 3 different configurations. The first one is completely off. The second one engages the electronics because the battery sends power to everything. And then the third one, if you hold down the clutch and you're in neutral, you can push this and the motorcycle fires right up, but make sure that you're in neutral. Alright, so there she goes. The motorcycle is started, and because I'm in neutral, I can let go of the clutch and the motorcycle is not going to go forward or stall on me. Now I'm going to demonstrate for you what happens if you're in first gear and you turn on the motorcycle and then all of a sudden let go of the clutch, or pop it as most people would call it. Watch what happens. Now you see, because you're not giving the motorcycle any throttle, the engine chokes and it turns off. It's a safety mechanism. Anytime you start your motorcycle and you want it to idle for a little bit, make sure that you always do it in neutral. So now let's talk a little bit about shifting your motorcycle. So I'm going to turn the motorcycle on once again, and I'm going to demonstrate for you how it works. Alright, so now that the motorcycle is on, we're in first gear. Every single time I want to go up in gears or down in gears, I have to hold the clutch down. And to set off, I'm going to hold the clutch lever to engage the transmission, push down, and now I'm in first gear. So the way it works is, you always push down to go in first gear, and if you want to go back to neutral, you have to kick it up just a little bit. It's in between first and second, so just give it a little kick, and there you go, the motorcycle goes into neutral. So now if I wanted to go back to first, I kick it down and the motorcycle goes back to first. But now I'm going to describe to you how to get the motorcycle to start moving, and that's by something called the friction zone. Now the way the friction zone works is, if you let go of the clutch, slowly the motorcycle begins to move. Like right now, I'm at the cusp of the friction zone. It's moving just a little bit, but as I let go of the clutch cable, more and more it starts to move, as you can see. But make sure that you don't let go of the clutch too much, because then it's going to stall on you just like that. Okay, so make sure you let go of the clutch very smoothly and gradually. Never like this, because if you let it go like that, the motorcycle is going to stall on you. And if you're at a red light and there's cars coming, it could be very dangerous. So now, letting go of the clutch a little bit, engaging it, now I've entered the friction zone. Motorcycle begins to move. And now as the motorcycle begins to move, look left and right, make sure there's no one coming if you're in a big parking lot. Find a safe location. On my motorcycle, the idle speed is about 8 miles an hour. So for most motorcycles, depending on the displacement and how many cc's it has and how much torque it has, most motorcycles will do anywhere between 5 to 10 miles per hour. So now, you want to stop your motorcycle, and beyond this point of just running idle, you don't want to do anything else until you get yourself familiar with the brakes. There's 2 ways to use your brakes. Number 1, you could use it with the foot pedal on your right side, as we discussed before. My suggestion to you is, anytime you're riding your motorcycle less than 10 miles an hour, always use your rear brakes, especially if you're a shorter stature person. Using your rear brakes will allow you to slow down smoother without giving it a handful, because if you give it a handful, the motorcycle, especially if you have your wheels turned, the motorcycle is going to get dumped. So right now, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my rear brakes, and you're going to see the motorcycle slow down. But as it slows down, you notice what happens? The engine is starting to get bogged down. And so if the engine is starting to get bogged down, that means you have to hold down the clutch to disengage the transmission for the motorcycle to slow down without it stalling, right? So I'm going to simultaneously give it rear brakes and pull the clutch so the motorcycle can safely slow down on its own. And now the clutch is disengaged. The motorcycle slowed down because I used my rear brakes. And now, since it's in first gear, I can take off once again. So, just like before, if your foot was on the rear brakes because you were stationary, take your foot off the rear brakes, put it on the pegs. Let go of the clutch just a little bit for the clutch to engage with the transmission. And now you set off once again. So now, with the right hand, you can give the motorcycle a little bit of throttle. Check this out. Now I'm going faster than 8 miles an hour. Woohoo! Again, make sure to scan your horizon. Make sure there's no cars on your left or your right. So we're going to make a right over here. And you always, always, always want to have 2 fingers, okay? 2 fingers. Not like this, but 2 fingers on the brakes at all times. All these things are going to be very, very new to you in the beginning, but trust me, it's going to come together after riding the motorcycle for a couple of 100 miles. But for the first time that you're riding a motorcycle, everything is going to be brand new to you. There's a lot to take in, I know, but riding a motorcycle is so much fun, trust me on that. So I think now we are ready to shift the motorcycle into second gear. If you're going to shift up to second gear, make sure you do it somewhere around 8 to 10 miles an hour, because otherwise the engine is going to bog down depending on the type of motorcycle you have. To shift the motorcycle into second gear, hold down the clutch and with your foot kick up. Now I'm in second gear. I let go of the clutch slowly. If I pop the clutch, the motorcycle is going to jerk forward and it won't be very smooth. Now I have a bit more torque, and the second gear is going to be able to carry me up to about 60-70 miles per hour, but this all depends on the type of bike that you have. Now that I'm slowing down, I kick it down to first gear, because if I have the motorcycle in second gear and I'm only doing 6 miles an hour, the motorcycle is going to stall. So now I'm doing 15 miles an hour, holding down the clutch, kicking it up, giving a little bit more gas, 20 miles an hour, kicking it up. Now I'm into third gear. So now I'm going to make a right turn, kick it down, go into second gear, let go of my clutch smoothly, give it a little bit more gas with my right hand. Now I'm going to kick it back down to first gear and make a right turn here and park the motorcycle. And let's park it right over there and talk a little bit more. There you go. We made it. If you got to this point and you've been following along, pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. Let's talk a little bit more about engaging and disengaging the clutch, shifting up and down through the gears, just so we can drill it in. Let's recap what we learned so far. This is your clutch lever. This is your brake lever. Your brake lever controls the front brakes. 90% of the time, you will be using your front brakes. These are your rear brakes. 10% of the time, you will be using them. And the 10% of the time that you do use your brakes are going to be on red lights where you're slowing down. Anytime you use your front brakes, make sure that you're using them when you're going straight, never when the motorcycle is turned left or right. Now, this tip is only for beginners, people who are just learning how to ride a motorcycle for the first time. This tip is not for novices or advanced people. Just in case you comment down below, hey, what are you talking about? What about trail braking and corner braking and blah, 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 this and that. As a beginner, for the first couple of times where you're riding a motorcycle, make sure that if you're going to be using your brakes, make sure that you're going straight. Otherwise, to play it safe, if you're not going that fast, make sure you're using your rear brakes. You don't want to dump your motorcycle like I dumped mine in the beginning. I wish I had the tip that I'm telling you at the moment. Other than that, first gear on a motorcycle is kicking it down, and then 5 gears are kicking it up, just like that. And then in between first and second gear, you're going to find the neutral gear. Riding a motorcycle in the beginning is going to be a little bit difficult because you have to get familiar with all the controls. But I think you should be patient with yourself. Once you take the MSF course, you'll get very, very familiar with doing it. And of course, you can come back to this video and watch it over and over again. Stay tuned for video number 2, because video number 2 takes us on the street where I teach you guys how to ride your motorcycle the first week you get your license, because those are some of the things that were not taught to me, and I wish that I knew these before I started riding a motorcycle. So stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to the channel to get notified when the next video comes, and give this video a like. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more. Ciao for now.